Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Someone Stole My Laundry, the podcast where I find interesting things on the internet and I bring them to you. Before we get into today's topic, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Remember that your likes, your shares, what it does is it pushes videos like this up in the algorithm. It pushes podcasts as well up in the algorithm. It tells the algorithm that podcasts such as this are important. But we need to remember that just because podcasts of this sort are not pushed up does not mean that these podcasts aren't important. And so I work with intent toward the life that I want. And so again, I'm learning more about the law and learning more about a phenomenon that is impacting people like me in the global north. And people, they're not ready to hear that now. They're not ready to hear that it is the states that we live in. It's the United States. It is the Republic of Ireland. It's these countries that are supposed to protect human rights that are actually eviscerating them, and dangerously so. And I don't think that people living in these states want to hear that. We often want to call out countries that we're calling out countries about the human rights violations that they're doing abroad, but we're not calling them out what they're doing within their own borders. And that doesn't mean that everybody's not doing that. People are doing it, but so I say that to say that it's important for us to work with intent toward the life that we want. And for me, that's just somewhere in the legal field. And I know that it's going to be an uphill battle because, of course, I have this very powerful government and intelligence agency that is concerned about every aspect of my life and wanting to ruin my reputation, because I just don't want to be tied to a nation that doesn't love me. I don't want to be in a relationship with a nation that doesn't want to protect me. I don't want to be in a relationship with a nation that doesn't respect me. I don't want to be in a relationship with a nation that really hates me. And I think that this is the problem for the United States of America and in countries like the Republic of Ireland, who can't see that, because there is, I guess, a hegemonic aspect of, or a hegemonic view of people in the United States. So people are comfortable being under this kind of oppression and this kind of state sanctioned violence. People are, there are complacent sometimes, and not only that, but they're comfortable, and maybe they just don't have, it doesn't bother them the way that it bothers me. And so I've decided for myself that I don't want to be in a relationship like that anymore, that I deserve better, and I want to be in a new relationship with a new country that really respects me and cares about me and that loves me, and so that I can love it, respect it in return, and learn more about a new country. And so, these intelligence agencies, they're doing everything that they can to try and shape, make, so in these, what's happening is that I have made a decision that the life that I want is nowhere in the United States because of the human rights violations that are happening there. And so these intelligence agencies, they can't understand that. They're like, because you don't want to live in the United States, we're going to make you pay. We're going to make your life horrible every single day in this new country, in every country that you go to. But don't they have something better to do? Is the question. And so in the next question, and that's just for reflection, do they have something better to do? Now, I'm working with intent toward the life that I want, and we have intelligence agencies that are trying to prevent that. And the question is, do they have something better to do? I mean, is there a national security issue that they could put more time to, or put more energy into, and put more resources into stopping? Because if I'm to be honest, I'm looking on the news every day, and I'm seeing a new situation unfold every single day, and my mind tells me that the funds that they're using to intimidate could have gone towards stopping incidents like that. And to the third statement, I welcome change, new ideas, and interesting experiences. And I think that's what I'm doing, as a person who is studying law and learning more about narrative victimology. And so I am learning more. But with narrative criminology, there is a crime that has happened, and the person is giving a narrative about that crime and explaining why that crime occurred. And with narrative victimology, it's how that person has been victimized by that crime. And so that helped me articulate my experience as being victimized by state agents that are engaged in transnational repression. And so this was a new, interesting experience for me to learn about this area of law. And it's not necessarily an area of law, but it's more so a theory that is being used in criminology, which is, of course, these narratives that we tell to explain victimology and criminology. And it was a very interesting experience for me to actually write that down on paper and to get that out by tying it to a theory in criminology. And it was a change that I welcomed because it was something that I hadn't done before. And another change that I'm welcoming in my life right now is I'm just becoming a new person, being a new person with new ideas. And so I remember my sister told my mom, she said that I'm not the same as I used to be. And she's right. I have changed in a lot of ways. But I think what's poignant about that statement is that how I'm not the person that I used to be is that I become a person that I'm no longer materialistic. I'm no longer I think I'm no longer moved by inauthenticity, right? And I used to be a person who, as a person who worked in the, as a dancer, I was a person that was always around people that had a party life. And although, when I was, an adult dancer, I didn't have, I didn't consider my life to be a party life because I never did any, I'm a teetotaler. I don't do any drugs. I don't smoke. And so I didn't really live like a party lifestyle outside of, the only thing about my lifestyle in the past that was like this aspect of party was just being an adult entertainer, right? And so I think that that's really how I've changed, because the person that I used to be was someone who saw the world through the lens of being a very materialistic person and being a person who was superficial and talked about shopping all the time, talked about handbags. And don't get me wrong, to reiterate, I love a good handbag. Me and my cousin, we were just talking about handbags the other day. I do love a nice handbag, but in the past, all I could think about sometimes is having a very nice handbag. So, I went up my credit line on Louis Vuitton, Hermes. Of course, I was in relationships with very wealthy men, and they would buy me very nice bags all the time, and it was a life that it was a part of my life that I enjoyed, right? And so when I think back to that aspect of my life, it was not something that I can look back on and say, this was just very horrible. No, that was a really good time in my life. And, I had a life that was where I was dressed nice, had a nice car, handbags. But to tell you the truth, it was empty. It was an empty life that it wasn't meaningful. And so what's disappointing is that, ladies and gentlemen, oftentimes I would come across, during that time in my life, I would come across some really smart people. And some people that would actually want to have these really thought-provoking conversations. And that was not something that I really wanted to have. Because of course, I was a person that was a very materialistic person. And so, if it wasn't about having a nice dinner, if it wasn't about shopping, it wasn't about that, then it wasn't something that I wanted to hear. And I think people still have that frame of mind, that they're still living in that thought process. And now, what I just really want to do, because I've already had that life, now I just want to sit down and I want to have a good conversation. And I want to know more about something that I don't know. And I think that that's how I've changed. And so that's how I welcome change now. I only set the tone for the type of week I want. And so I guess this is what I'm going to be doing this week, is I want to set the tone for the kind of week that I want. Because again, I want wanted someone stole my laundry to be about affirmation, positive reflection, things that are bringing change, or things that are interesting on the internet, and not necessarily intellectual, but interesting, right? But in this particular episode, ladies and gentlemen, I have talked about transnational repression, and I have talked about aspects of my life that haven't been so pleasant. And so how I'm tying that into setting the tone for this week is that I'm learning from how people may perceive me in the environment that I'm in. And throughout this week, I'm sure that, I had a class today, and I'm presenting myself, asking specific questions in a specific way, and I'm setting the tone for the kind of week that I want to have. And so that tone is a more informative and a more educational week. This week will be all about making progress of any kind. And I love this question, or this statement, because it's of any kind. So whether I finish a chapter in a book, whether I understand a new theory, whether I understand a new legal approach, that's all about making progress. Whether I walk down to the university and upload a podcast, or upload a YouTube video, or I walk to the university and I take my notes for the assessment, I'm making progress of any kind. And so today I said, the progress that I want to make this week is I want to go ahead and print all my notes out for my legal approaches class, or my legal approaches module. And I really want to understand, the theories in these 2 journal articles that we were assigned. And I really want to understand them in a way to where when I write my assessment, that I really get a good mark. And so I guess that's the progress that I want to make, because I want to think about it critically, to understand the information, and I want to get a good mark. And I think that is all about making the progress that I want to make this week. So, ladies and gentlemen, I said in the video that I was, or in the podcast that I deleted, I want to go back to what I was saying about authenticity, because I said that I no longer wore extensions in my hair, and didn't use filters anymore. And that's not to say that I see anything wrong with filters, or that I see anything wrong with extensions. And I'm going back to this because I think it's important to have this conversation, and to speak from the lens that I'm coming from, is that what I'm trying to do is, and it goes back to authenticity, I'm trying to be more authentic to myself. And so what does that look like as a reflection? What does that look like for other people? Excuse me. Well, I don't know. But for me, what that looks like is that I I want to present myself in a way that is authentic to me. And so if that's not wearing extensions in my hair, if that's not face tuning, or putting filters over my photos. And let me explain that in detail. So a few years ago, and I think I said this earlier, but I want to reiterate this. A few years ago, I actually used a filter on my photo, and I looked very beautiful in that photo, but like I felt like it didn't represent how I look every day, and it didn't represent how I, my true self, and so although that is me, and I see, okay, that's me in that photo, it wasn't me in my raw form. And so I want people to see me in my raw form, because that is the most authentic. That is me in my most authentic self. And so if I wear hair extensions, and I don't see anything wrong with lace wigs, I don't see anything wrong with hair extensions, but one thing that I've noticed, and I'm speaking for myself, not speaking for anybody else, because again, I used to wear lace wigs all the time, I used to wear hair extensions, but when I did wear the lace wigs and hair extensions, I noticed that I looked different when I took it out, right? So it was always like a different me. And so what I want to do now, ladies and gentlemen, is just kind of, what I'm trying to do is just to really present myself in a way that is most authentic to myself. So I'm not wearing any hair extensions. And if I straighten my hair, it's my hair. And again, I don't see anything wrong with it. If I want to wear a wig, and this goes back to open to new experiences. If I want to wear a wig, or if I want to wear clip-ons, then that's something that I choose to do. But I'm not choosing to do that right now because, again, I'm trying to really treat my hair and make it healthy. And so I just kind of wanted to go back to that because I feel like I didn't really articulate that in detail. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. So what do you think? How is your heart full of love? And what new experiences are you open to? And is there something that you're working with, intentionally toward the life that you want? And are there new ideas and interesting experiences that are coming your way that you want to be open to? And how are you setting the tone for the week that you want to have? And how is this week going to be about you making progress? And what kind of progress are you going to make? These are all questions that I want to know. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget to hit that like button, share this video if you feel like it's useful. And I can always use more subscribers, so don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. And I'm going to link my Facebook account in the description of this podcast. Hope that you can follow me there on my Facebook account, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.